Welcome to the age of mass participation. I hope you remember some of these photographs. We lived through a pretty amazing time a year ago. We watched something transformative happen in our society, filled with hope and promise. And the reason why this was so important, and it had a lot of meaning for a lot of different people, was because it allowed people to get involved in a very direct way, some more than others. But if you think about how political opinion gets formed in our country, it happens because people talk to each other. And they do it around dining tables, maybe around a water cooler, in a park, at the VFW hall, or over the back fence. And people share their hopes, their aspirations, their fears, their prejudices, and eventually consensus is formed, and we all go to the polls. Everybody will recognize this shot of the New York City's antique voting systems. But what are the technologies that actually supported voting in the past and people communicating with each other? Well, of course, the printing press, or the telephone, buttons on our lapel, or lawn signs. But we are entering a new era with new kinds of signs. I'm sure you all recognize these names: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Google. But look at this statistic. By 2010, in a month, 75% of all humanity are going to be connected by cell phones. If you think about it, by 2015, virtually all of humanity will be connected by cell phones, and the cell phones that they're going to be carrying are going to make the iPhones and the BlackBerries of today look like cell phone briefcases that we carried 10 years ago. There are going to be people on a planet who don't have clean running water that are going to have cell phones. There's 20 hours of YouTube videos uploaded on YouTube every minute. Facebook has 300 million users. That in itself would make it the 5th largest country in the world. And it's growing by hundreds of thousands per day. So who are all these 21st century political pamphleteers? No, actually, let me show you the real 21st century political pamphleteers. My parents. Now, I found out as I was arriving today that my parents were actually founding members of Common Cause, and the first question I asked was that before or after I was born, and Bob Edgars quickly said it was because I was born. But actually, the reason why I'm bringing my parents into this presentation is because of that. I didn't realize exactly how powerful this technology was going to be on our political system until about 6 or 7 months before the election, when I got a phone call from my dad, who calls me often and asks me advice about how to use the Mac I gave him about a year ago, asking me if I could help him send more than one email to his friends and to show him how to do it. So I went over to his house, looked over his shoulder, showed him how to use his address book, and I looked at the email my father was sending to his friends. And the email in the subject line was, "Watch this," and it was a link to a Barack Obama YouTube video. And then it dawned on me. Because in a previous election cycle, my father and my mom, they wouldn't have picked up the phone and called their friends and tell their friends who to vote for. They wouldn't have shown up at a rally holding up a sign. They might have made a campaign contribution, but for the most part, they kept their political opinions to themselves. But if they were sitting around a dining table, talking with their friends, if the subject turned to politics, they would have certainly offered their opinion. Well, that afternoon, my father was reaching the same 50 friends that it would have taken him a year and a half to see around a dining table. doing it one email address at a time. So imagine what someone who knows how to use their address book or knows how to use YouTube can do. Think about the generation of people who actually know how these technologies change the way people communicate. Here's one suggestion, one statistic from the last election. In total, during the election campaign, there was 150 billion hours of online video that mentioned Obama or McCain. Only 150 million of those 1.5 billion hours were of videos produced by Obama or McCain's campaigns. That means that 9 out of 10 online videos were produced by citizens communicating with each other. So welcome to the future of common cause. 4 years ago, I ran for public advocate, and I'd like to quickly acknowledge Mark Green, who set the precedent for that office, who's here somewhere. Mark in the back, with his wife Benny. I ran for that office with the hopes of not just making it a single person's representing 8 million people, but rather using technology to link all New Yorkers to each other, because there were literally tens of thousands of public advocates in New York. People who volunteer in schools, clean up parks, feed the homeless, join community boards, they're all public advocates. If there's a single mother who's worried about asthma care in the hospitals in the Bronx, she doesn't know that there's another single mother with a child in Staten Island worried about the same thing. If they could connect with each other, and 30 of them showed up at a city council hearing to demand more money for funding for asthma in the hospitals, city hospitals, you could be rest assured that all the city council members would show up because their staff would call them up right away. So I'm offering you a vision for the future, which is that your name is the future. There's an opportunity for Common Cause to actually take advantage of all these technologies and link everybody who cares about a particular issue because it means something deep and important to them. Whether it be reforming the legislature, whether it be transparency, whether it be healthcare, whether it be education, the people who are going to change the future are not the politicians. And they're not the journalists, although those are important people too. It's the people of the state of New York. And they're out there waiting for you, and they're using these tools, and they're hoping that you will lead them. But let me leave you with one last story to tell you why I'm doing this. This is a picture of my grandfather, Zygmunt Rasiej. He was a police captain in southeastern Poland, a magistrate in the 1930s. And he noticed that in his district, there were Jews, Russian Orthodox Catholics, and Roman Catholics who were meeting in their churches, meeting in their synagogues, but they had no single place to meet. A few years ago, I took my father to visit the town he was born in, and as we were driving from the 2-bedroom house he was born in to the church where he was an altar boy, we passed a building that said community center on it. My father says to me, "I laid the bricks for that building." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well," he told me the story, that his father raised the money to build a community center, and on weekends he and his sons, including my dad, built that community center so that the people in his community would have a secular place to meet. My grandfather was captured at the beginning of the war by Stalin, and he was murdered along with 22,000 other Polish officers and police captains and intellectuals of Catholic and Jewish and other persuasions at the hands of Stalin, and which was kept secret from the world for 40 years. So my parents often ask me, "So what do you do? What conference do you run? Where are you going? What's all this email stuff?" So, Mom, Dad, I'm still building that community center. And we're going to build it exactly the way your father, Dad, wanted it to be built. Thank you very much.